Hello again, everybody. I'm Todd Miller. March is National Athletic Training Month. And in celebration of that, Oklahoma Baptist University is proud to salute the 5 outstanding members of the Oklahoma Baptist University Sports Medicine Department. And I'm Todd Miller. We bring in the head athletic trainer at Oklahoma Baptist University, Ben Cleveland. Ben, always a pleasure to see you. And first of all, on behalf of everyone at Oklahoma Baptist, thank you so much for all the hours and all the love and dedication you give to the student athletes.
Well, thanks, Todd. Like I said, it's a pleasure to be here with you, man. We appreciate how, what you do for us and like highlighting our programs, our department. You do a great job with that. And yeah, I mean, it's been a difficult year, obviously, but it's a task that we've took on, and I think our staff has done a great job navigating through this past year to provide the best care that we can to our athletes during this kind of interesting time.
Okay, you could study to be an athletic trainer. You can study to be a coach. You can study to be an athletic administrator. But there's nothing in your curriculum that ever prepares you, especially on the sports medicine front, for what you've gone through the last 12 months. What has that been like for you as the head athletic trainer and for the other 4 members of your staff there on Bison Hill?
Well, yeah, you're right. There's no like instruction manual on, hey, how to navigate through a pandemic and that kind of thing. So it was tough. It was tough. There were times that you're kind of learning on the fly. So I mean, a lot of that. Like every day, it seemed like things were changing so much from day to day, week to week, and even month to month. There was just so much information that we were just learning about how to, one, like what this virus is doing, who it's affecting, how it's affecting people, how do we test for it, what do we do if someone tests positive for it. There were so many variables that we just did not know. And so at the beginning, it was just really, a challenge. And there was a lot of, I guess, just, the unknown part of it was probably the most fearful part because we just didn't know what to do or how to do it. But the more we kind of went through it and the more we learned, I think we were able to qualm some of those fears and to move forward, in a steady way. Yeah, I think just the initial part of it was the hardest. As we looking back now from where we were, even like, just a year ago, I mean, so much has changed. Even some things may not have changed as much, but I mean, we're in a much better spot now than we were, 1 year ago, as far as knowing what the virus is, how it's contracted, how we can test for it, how we can, quarantine people for it, how we can do all these things to care for it. We've just learned a lot over this past year.
How difficult is it? Because first of all, I'm going to back up in this comment and say that OBU has been very, very blessed this year. When you look at other schools in the region and the conference, they've missed a lot of games. OBU has not had to miss a lot of games, and I credit that to you and your staff. But on the rare occasion you've had to deliver the bad news, how difficult is that for you to say you've tested positive to COVID and you're shut down for 10 days?
That was probably the hardest part. I mean, like you said, we didn't have that happen a lot, but in some instances we did, where it affected, a couple of our teams on campus that we had to shut them down for, 10 to 14 days. And I mean, that's not any news. Giving any bad news is never fun for us. Like telling a coach or an athlete, hey, you have a season-ending injury. That's never news you want to deliver. That was even heightened this year with the fact that we're having to deliver news that says, you tested positive, but the other side of that was they may not even be feeling any ill effects of,
Yeah.
And that was the hard part to try to convey to the coaches and the athletes, and even to us to some extent, like rationalizing and understanding what that really meant. But delivering that news, it's not easy, but thankfully, I mean, we had a really, I think, pretty understanding group of coaches and athletes. Now, was there frustrations? Absolutely, across the board. We were all dealt with frustrations with all of this because it was brand new, and we just were trying to take it, one day at a time. But yes, overall, I think everyone handled themselves relatively well. And like you said, we didn't have a lot of missed games from a team standpoint. We didn't have that many games that individuals missed. Honestly, if you look back at it, I mean, we were able to, if we ever had positive tests, we took care of them pretty quickly. We contact traced, and we were fortunate a lot of times where it didn't trickle down to entire teams.
It had to have been a little bit of a blessing in disguise having those 8 months or so off just to kind of re-energize yourself as an individual, as a husband, as a father, and for your entire training staff to kind of step back just a little bit during the downtime. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. I was just talking to James about that, and we've talked about that within our staff all the time. Is, when you work in athletics, like we mentioned before this morning in our interview, like that, we're always in season. So the time that we always look forward to is the summer, because the summer is our time to kind of take our little breather before we have to go back to the sprint of the next year. But to have this time off starting in basically March of last year, and we basically didn't come back to campus until the middle of June. I mean, that's 3 months off in the year that we normally don't ever have off. I mean, anyone in athletics, far be it just athletic trainers. But I mean, I look back on that time, despite the chaos and the things that were going on around the world and how terrible it's been, man, from a personal standpoint, there was just so many blessings. And so it was just such a gift, I felt like, of time to get back with my wife, my kids. I mean, I was able to, eat dinner with my family every single night. I was able to give my kids a bath and put them to bed every single night. Things that this didn't happen regularly during any course of a season. I would miss a lot of those times just because of the nature of the day. But to have those opportunities to do that, and was just, I just look back on it with a lot of fondness, and I appreciate that time, even though it was kind of it was given to us from kind of some terrible events, obviously. But I think most of us were given the chance just to kind of press the reset button and kind of evaluate ourselves, even if, like, from a professional standpoint. Like, it helped me to be like, what are things that we can do better? I mean, maybe we need to, I can take a big step back and look and say, are there things we can do better? Can we operate in a better, more efficient manner? And I think in some ways we wouldn't have gotten to that point if it wasn't for this, So we've just been trying to look at the positives and take the good that's come out of this and try to implement that into what we do, moving forward.
In your profession, not just at OBU, not just to the Great American Conference, across athletics, NAIA, D2, D3, Division I, are there lasting changes with athletic training that will come about now because of this pandemic?
I think probably so. I mean, and it may vary. It may vary a little bit, but I mean, I think there was probably already some semblance of the appointment-based system or the clinical approach to athletic training rooms and those kind of things in this setting. I think that have started to trickle down from the Division I level in certain instances, but I think this for sure has kind of accelerated that. I think it's going to cause people to kind of take a look at that and see there are more efficient ways and maybe better ways to operate the day-to-day than just always kind of reacting. This morning, I know we were talking with our staff. Lindsay mentioned that we kind of went to an appointment-based system this year because, one, excuse me, for capacity reasons in our facilities, we couldn't have everybody just come in whenever they wanted to. We needed to kind of know who was coming and how many people were in there at one time. So, that was a beneficial change for us. So I think going forward, and plus it kind of gave us the opportunity to kind of know what's coming up on our plate that day. And just to be prepared for what's coming through the door a little bit is helpful to kind of give us a better chance to tackle it in the right way, instead of always kind of just reacting to lots of different things. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest changes that I've noticed and will probably see trickle out through all this.
In Cleveland, assistant athletic director and head athletic trainer at Oklahoma Baptist University since 2015 is our guest. Ben, this is a really unique situation now because you had nothing to the fall, as we've already talked about. And now you have over 500 student athletes that are all in season all at one time. How much of a challenge has that presented for you guys since January 1st?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably been the biggest challenge that we've had, with not having sports compete in the fall. We kind of always joked, is like, we kind of could just like kind of see on the horizon what was kind of coming up, and we all knew, like, we had this downtime in the spring, summer, and fall, but like we knew when January got here, it was going to be an avalanche of sorts. And in some ways it has been, but I think because we've been preparing for it for so long, it really hasn't been, that difficult necessarily. I mean, it's been difficult, but we have a staff that can manage that, and we communicate well, we work well together, we fill in the gaps where people need help. So we try to do that. But I mean, yeah, whenever you combine fall sports into the spring season with already in-season spring sports, that's going to provide a challenge for for any staff, regardless of their size, much less the fact that we have 5 right now. But I mean, I think overall we've been able to manage it and do a great job, taking care of what we need to take care of, and doing what we need to do.
As I mentioned, you've been at Oklahoma Baptist since 2015, but you've actually been in the profession almost 2 decades, which blows my mind because you must have started when you were like 4 or 5, I guess. Is that correct? But
Right.
during that time, you've had to see a ton of changes in the profession. I think people from afar think you tape ankles and you wrap hands and fingers and then you send them off to other professionals. That's not the case. You do a ton behind the scenes besides what I just described. How much has changed since you first embarked in this career?
Man, I mean, a lot has changed. Just, I mean, philosophically, things have changed. Technology has changed. I mean, you mentioned, like, yeah, I was mentioning this morning, like, I've been certified now for, it'll be 15 years in July, which I can't really even, it feels like I just did this yesterday, like it's graduating from Alabama and like getting certified and all this stuff. But it's crazy to realize that. But I mean, yeah, lots of things, I mean, obviously have changed. But I think you're right. One of the biggest things that's changed too is like educating, I think, the public on what athletic training really is. And that's what this whole month is really about, is like educating other people about what it is that we actually do, that we're more than just, glorified water boys or taping ankles and, stretching people, that kind of thing. There's so much that goes into it. I mean, over the last several years, I mean, mental health has been a huge public health crisis, right? But athletic trainers, I mean, we've been on the front lines of that. I mean, we're dealing with those things in real time during the season with individuals who are having any various number of mental health issues. So that's one thing. Obviously, concussions have been a huge thing. The way we've cared for concussions has come, I mean, just light years in the last 10, 15 years. I mean, it's just, there's so much more we're able to do now to accurately diagnose these things and progress them through their rehab and return to play, all these kinds of things. So, like, there's just been so many things, I think, that have come about in the last 10 to 15 years from all those things that I mentioned. And technology obviously has been another thing. We have all these kind of nifty gadgets and things in the training room now, and that's always good for athletes to see that, and to kind of, they always want to test out the new stuff we have, which is always fun, and those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, it's lots changed, but there's also the things that haven't changed are things like how are you providing care? I mean, are you providing a good system quality of care for your athlete? And that really comes from, like, the putting their needs before your own. So that's the biggest thing. I think that's never going to change. Like, having an attitude of selflessness and service is the biggest thing. I think with athletic training is why I love it so much, is because it's all about other people. It's all about putting people's needs above your own. And so, as much as things change, as long as that stays the same, we're going to be an up and coming profession for years and years to come.
Am I correct in saying this, Ben, that your job now, maybe more than it was when you first embarked on this career, is not only about treating injuries in the present, but educating students about how to take care of their bodies and to be preventive in terms of trying to cut down on certain injuries?
Absolutely. I mean, prevention is probably the key, one of the key components of athletic training. One of our key pillars, our domains. And that's one of the biggest things we try to, educate athletes on, and even coaches too, are just on the benefits of preventative care. Because if we can prevent things from happening, I mean, then we're eliminating time missed off the court. We're eliminating potential, surgeries and these types of things, just by being proactive and being preventative. So that's been a huge part of what we do. And I mean, it's been a bigger part of what we do, honestly, because of the limitations we have as the staff. So we have 5 staff members, like you mentioned, and we're servicing over 550 or so athletes. So we can't all be hands-on with everyone we see. There's not enough time to do all that. So it really forces us and requires us to make sure we're educating everyone on proper care, proper stretching, proper nutrition, proper recovery, those types of things. If we're not doing that, then we're doing a disservice to our student athletes, and that's again a huge part of athletic training and what we do.
Head athletic trainer Ben Cleveland of Oklahoma Baptist is our guest. It is National Athletic Training Month. For more details, you can visit www.nata.org. And again, you'll be surprised what these guys and gals do behind the scenes. I think you and I have probably had this conversation before. I've had it with somebody. Why is there such an increase, or does it seem like there's such an increase in knee injuries in the women's sports?
Well, I guess some of that is just kind of the nature of the specific sports, but there is some sort of like an anatomical predisposition to females for knee injuries, and that's something I teach a class here, and one of the classes I teach is like an injury evaluation class, and so that topic usually comes up, and there typically is just the anatomical predisposition from the female body, where it's kind of like the angle of hip to knee ratio is different than it is for male on the average. And that's not for everyone, but on average in general, that's typically kind of a predisposition. It doesn't mean that's why those injuries happen more often in women's sports, but there is a predisposition to that. So, back to that last question about preventative care. That's why, one thing we try to focus on more so on the women's side is that ACL preventative, programming with those athletes, especially like athletes like basketball and soccer, any change of direction type sport. Those are the sports that you see those injuries happen the most in. So it's important to make sure that we're, attacking those and implementing preventative measures prior to, season starting, and even continuing them, maintaining them through the season as well.
You brought up a topic I wanted to touch on earlier, and that is concussions. Back when I played sports, or actually, I guess maybe I would have gotten hurt if somebody rolled up on me on the sidelines, not actually from the field of play, but it was like, hey, Joe's got a concussion. He got his bell rung. Get back in there. Isn't it amazing how much research and how much more knowledge we have in 20 or 30 years, and the way that you have to treat athletes now with concussions?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been a hot topic for a long time. It's not going away anytime soon. And concussions are they're difficult to sometimes manage and diagnose and treat because they're kind of that unseen injury, right? You can see if someone tears their ACL and then have a big huge swollen knee, like we can all see that and know that his knee is injured. See, if someone fractures their leg, we can generally see that, or sprains their ankle, like those, we can see those injuries. The concussion, you can't really see it necessarily. Now, what we've been trained to do is be able to see like the signs and the symptoms of the concussions. So, making sure that we understand and we're aware and we know what those signs are, that helps us to be able to diagnose these things properly. And also, we have so many tools now to help us objectively measure these things. In the past, like you referenced, like people would just say, you got your bell rung or whatever. Like, you're fine, get up and play. I don't, but then no one's measuring those things. We're just assuming that they're fine. That's usually not always not the case. So, having objective measures in place to show someone, hey, you're not fine. And this is why. And, so one of the things that we do, and as a staff here, and this is, all staffs do this, but we baseline test all of our athletes every single year. So that way we can have, if someone does suffer a head injury at practice, in a game, or even in some non-sport related way, and we can actually test them through the number of tests we have, it can say, okay, you're equal to baseline. So, okay, maybe I think we're okay to progress you back into activity. Or, hey, your measurement after this head injury now it's way different than what it was when you had your baseline test. So we're not going to allow you to participate until we get that number back down. So objectively, it protects us from like making you're probably fine, get back out there. It's so helpful to have objective data to say, no, you're not fine, or yes, you are fine, and we can get you back out there, in a safe way. So, but concussions are going to continue to be like that, and continue to be, frustrating, I think, for individuals. I mean, mainly, coaches, athletes, and even us sometimes. But the more we educate, and the more we can draw awareness to these things, I think the more understanding people will continue to be. And I think that's, you've kind of seen that shift from 10 years ago. There was a lot of pushback on all these things. It's becoming more where there's not as much pushback now, because everyone's aware of it, and they understand kind of what the processes are that we have to go through to ensure someone to return to play safely.
It's called 3 letters, CTE, that's really, really changed the outlook of the severity of concussions. Ben Cleveland, the Assistant Athletic Director and Head Athletic Trainer at OBU since 2015, is our guest. I've got 2 more questions for you, one of which is for a prospective employee, somebody that wants to be an athletic trainer. How competitive is it to get into your field?
I mean, it's competitive, but I mean, we're also, the competition comes from like what's your desire level to be an athletic trainer, because this is not for everyone. I'll say that with confidence, but I think anyone who is willing to be a hard worker and willing to build relationships and willing to learn, I think can do this for sure. So as far as competitiveness across the board and getting into the field, it's probably gotten a little more competitive because we have, as a healthcare profession, we've kind of changed our education requirements to like, we're becoming more like a master's level entry level profession now. So, when I was in school, I did my undergrad at Alabama, and then took my test, and then went and became a GA at Florida State, and then got some experience there before I went into like my next step. That's kind of the old way of doing things. The new way now is like, you would graduate your undergrad degree in some sort of related field, and then enter into a master's level program, and within 2 years, get some experience, get curriculum, get your master's degree, take your test, and then go out into the real world. And that was kind of by design to kind of help us as a profession ensure everyone who's an athletic trainer has that master's degree with kind of attached to them as just an added level of, hey, we are medical professionals, and we are highly educated medical professionals at that.
All right, last question. I don't know if there's a profession, well, I suppose any profession in the medical field would be this way, but you can have such sadness and such heartbreak, but yet at the end of the story, you get your biggest reward. And then I've seen an injured athlete whose prognosis may not be good in getting back to the field, that you guys have a hand in returning he or she back to competition. Is that the most rewarding part of what you do on a daily basis?
I would say probably, yeah, probably so. And that really comes from the relationship. Like one of the biggest like motivators or things that kind of has kept me going all these years in being an athletic trainer is like the relationships I've been able to build with these athletes over the years. I mean, there's still athletes that I talk to now that were my athletes, 10 years ago, and we still keep in touch and all that kind of stuff, and have gone to their weddings and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's probably the most rewarding part of like the overall part of what we do. But in any given year, absolutely, man. To see someone go into the valley of sadness after an injury, and you're kind of alongside them. You have to deliver the bad news. You have to do the test and say, hey, I'm sorry. I think I think we have a serious injury here. Let's get some imaging done. Let's see our team doc. Let's go all this route to confirm these things. You hope you're always wrong. No situation. You always hope that I'm wrong. But then whenever that stuff does get confirmed, there's that, there's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of uncertainty because, people, all kinds of people who go through injuries, like with anything, people react differently to them. So, I mean, anyone could have the same injury. They could all both react completely differently in the same situation. So, making sure we're kind of going along them, encouraging them, giving them proper instruction, making sure we're giving our best to help them get to their best. And then when you see them go through all of that, those days and weeks and months of just kind of grinding out all this rehab and all this time they put in, to see them get back in the field is just, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really else that's like it. And again, like it's not because of us. It's just because we're getting to be a small part into getting them back to what they love to do. And like, that's where the joy comes for us, is like, just being able to be a part of those things and those moments where kids get to be and do the things that they love to do. So it's never because, man, it's not, look what I did. Look how good I am at getting this person back. It's never that. It's always, man, that's so awesome to see him back out there, her back out there again, doing what she loves and playing with no reservation, with no hesitation, just playing. Like, that's a huge joy that we all get.
Bison Nation, the next time you offer up a prayer, do so of thanks for this training staff. Dylan and Lauren, Lindsay, Walter, and Ben, terrific human beings. And man, they're really, really good at what they do and a vital part of the continued athletic success at OBU. Ben, it's always great to spend time with you. Thank you again for all that you do. And we'll look forward to seeing you on down the line.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you so much.
Ben Cleveland, Assistant Athletic Director and Head Athletic Trainer at Oklahoma Baptist University since 2015. Again, it is National Athletic Training Month across the country. For more information, visit www.nata.org.